Now.
Okay.
Alright, so I guess in theory I should be able to see this on YouTube now?
That's kind of scary.
Yes, I am.
Mark down. So, what is Apple doing that is impressive?
Yeah, I'm sending you a link in case you want to check it out. Alright, well, they've been talking about this for a few years about switching from Intel to ARM processors. And
Okay, wait, what is an ARM processor?
an ARM processor, like, okay, you know how you got an iPhone, what, 11?
Yeah.
The CPU that's in there is an ARM processor. It's not a x86 like in your Mac or my computer. And now, what that means is that it's the architecture, like the language that the computer, the basic language of the CPU, basically. Because CPUs are more or less similar, across all the different types, but they have a language, so to speak, of their own. And in ARM processors, they use a different language. And so with the switch from, like, you remember back, what was it, 2004, 2005, when Mac switched from PowerPC to Intel?
Vaguely, yes.
Well, basically they're doing the same thing again, pretty much for the same reasons why they dropped PowerPC, because PowerPC wasn't giving them the the efficiency that they wanted out of the CPU. Now, ARM CPUs are very efficient power-wise, and power-wise they are. I mean, that's about their biggest benefit, because they're very low wattage chips compared to x86. So, in theory, if you added in...
See, you can't even explain it.
Oh no, I can explain it. It's a very complicated thing. It's not as simple as saying the difference between a Ford Mustang and a Ford Mustang GT. It's not like that. They are two different animals. They speak two different languages, basically. ARM is, like I said, is much more power efficient compared to x86. So that's why your phone, like, you can leave it on standby and it could sit there for like 4 days on one battery charge, or even sitting there. I know on a lot of phones you can get like 10 hours out of them watching YouTube and texting and all that. But on your laptop, you might get 5 or 6 hours.
Sure.
And so basically, what Apple's doing here is they're switching the architecture and designing the chips themselves. They're not being strangled by Intel, because if Intel is like, oh, we're gonna do that, we're gonna go down this path, and Apple's like, oh, we want this. Intel's got not only Apple to worry about, they have to worry about all the other OEMs that are buying their chips, including people like me who build computers.
Right.
So they're not as focused on Apple's needs or wants as Apple can be. So, I mean, in some way, this is actually a pretty good move on Apple's part, because they can offer things, they can optimize the hell out of the CPU for Apple workloads, specifically for Apple workloads.
Yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense.
Now, the downside of this is that all the software for the last 15 years that's been made for Mac OS has to be redone, has to be recompiled, tweaked, fixed, that kind of thing, to be able to be used on these new Macs when they come out. And there's no guarantee that software developers will want to do this, because that's the same thing that happened to Microsoft and Ubuntu several years ago when they switched, or when they decided to try to come out with an ARM-based operating system. Like Microsoft did it with the Surface, and Ubuntu came out with a ARM-based distro for itself, to use on ARM. They even went as far as building this massive ARM-based server farm to show off the capabilities of it, and it just didn't catch on. Now, there is a lot of differences between the Apple and Microsoft and even the Ubuntu user base. Because to say it mildly, Mac has a very fanatical fan base.
Yes.
That
at very least.
They will stick with Apple no matter what the hell Apple is doing. You know?
I mean, I think there's some misconceptions though. Because some people use Apple just because they don't see any other alternative. They don't use it because they're, like, obsessed with it.
What do you mean by no alternative? Like, they're locked in, like, the software-wise, or?
Me. I don't want to learn Ubuntu. I won't use Windows anymore. That leaves me Apple. I don't want to learn Linux. And Linux is a disadvantage to me. I want a mainstream OS that works regular programs. I don't want open source. So if I won't do Windows,
that's a bold statement there, because there's a lot of cross platform software nowadays that are available for all three of them.
But is it? It's like, yes, they're available for all these different platforms, but they work better in some things than others. I mean, I'll give you that, yes, Linux and all the associated distros are actual operating systems, and nobody can claim that they're not. But Apple OS X and Windows, Microsoft Windows are legitimately the only, like, real ones that are out on the market that, they sell in a store, and that...
On contraire, Lenovo and Dell have started selling laptops with Red Hat and Fedora and Ubuntu on them. And there is System 76, which is a pretty decently sized company that creates Linux, builds computers specifically for Linux. So it is growing. It's about where Mac was 30 years ago.
So, give it another 30 years.
No. Not 30. I would say... I know everybody wants to predict the year of the Linux desktop, and I'm not that arrogant. I don't know... Because you are right. When it comes to Linux, it's not really for everybody. I mean, I've been using it for, 15 years now? And... I can tell you right now, it's not for everybody. I would never. I mean, I would suggest people try it, but I would never hold their feet to the fire and be like, "Oh, you have to use this." You will like it even if you don't. I'm not that type of person. I don't really. Excuse me. Got a frog in my throat. I don't really care what operating system people use. I just don't want them bashing my operating system of choice because they think theirs is better, because Apple's motto for years, what was it, think differently? Well, even though Apple's is think differently, Linux's is do differently, be different. And so trying to compare Apple and Windows and Linux all together as which one's better, that's not really the right question now, is it? Because as you pointed out, you don't want to learn Linux, you don't want to go back to Windows, and some people might be locked into several of the programs that are exclusively only available on Mac, and that could be true about what's available on Linux, or that's another big reason why Linux's adoption rate is so low compared to Apple, because of the fact that you're right. I'm bullshitting you on that. The software choice is kind of lame on that side of things.
I was gonna say,
Can we please get a decent graphical, photo manipulation program other than GIMP? Because GIMP is GIMP pisses me off. I ain't gonna lie.
GIMP's all that you can use if you're in fucking Ubuntu, but if you're in Windows, you could use Clip. Clip is awesome.
Yeah, but as a developer, I mean, my biggest drawback to that as a developer is Windows is slow when it comes to development because they spent so many years optimizing the system for gaming and media consumption that they've forgot about us developers. And Mac kind of picked up the ball on that one, but I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore this fact. You know, the price difference between what I can build or buy as a PC and what I get out of an Apple.
Yeah.
And because I hear this one a lot about like the Mac Pro. I see this a lot that people like, oh, you know, they talk about how great it is, and it is a great, you know, it's a great computer. Don't get me wrong. It's not a POS like the trash can Mac book or the Mac Pro was. It's an awesome, beautiful machine, but you know that's a lot of money to justify on buying it for what I do.
I mean, I don't even really know anything about the Mac Pro because I haven't looked at it because it's so freaking expensive. It's not for me. I couldn't afford it even if I wanted to.
Well, and that's just it. It's not for me, and it's not for you. It's not for developers. It's for media studios. It's for like movie studios and stuff like that. It's not, you know, for content creators, for like the bigger YouTubers and movie studios that are doing color corrections on their films and stuff like that. I mean, that's the whole design principle behind the Mac Pro. I mean, if you really look at it, you know, it's only got 3 fans on it, and they're virtually silent, and everything else is passively cooled on it. That is literally there to cut down on the noise generated by the computer itself. So when you're sitting there doing audio work or whatever, you don't have this low hum buzz from, you know, standard computer fans that are in the background messing up your ability to listen to the audio or the movie or whatever. Or if you're recording, you know, you get your recording studio and you try to soundproof it, you try to reduce as much noise as possible so you get the cleanest audio coming into it. And the Mac, it helps with that. The Mac Pro is specifically designed for that. So to really say that, you know, if I want a Mac that's customizable, I should buy a Mac Pro because it's not made for me even. It's not made for you. It's not made for me.
I don't think it's funny at all.
It's not funny. It's funny because how many people say it's made for people like me or you, and it's really, really not. And to try to bash Apple for it, I mean, I know I've said things about like the $1,000 stand, the $600 wheels. That's just
okay, that's stupid, but to be fair, you do have to kind of dismantle that thing in order to put those wheels in there. I mean, it's doable, but I could understand charging something to put in the wheels, but not $600 or whatever. No.
I mean, because I think I've joked with you about the wheels that, you know, oh, good, so you can push it into the closet when your friends come over.
Ha.
But really, it's I mean, I don't know what they're thinking on, because I know a lot of people like, you know, the stand itself actually, engineering wise, it's kind of impressive because it doesn't use screws, it doesn't use bolts or anything like that. It uses magnets to hold the the $6,000 display for it.
It's a good design.
But then again, I mean, in my opinion, I mean, and this is dead honest. If you've got $5,000 to throw at the base Mac Pro, $6,000 to throw at the screen, you probably got $1,500 to throw at the stand and the wheels.
Yes, that's the thing, is that if you're already buying the computer, you know, tacking on the wheels and the stand, that's like an extra $1,000? Oh, I'm already spending $53,000. What's another 1,000?
Yeah.
That's the way they're looking at it, and that's also, that's also the way that a studio would look at it. You know, it's like, oh, it's another 1,000. Well, we've already pissed away 1,000,000. Who cares about another 1,000? Now, what I wish Apple would do. Okay, they've got the MacBook Pro, which is supposed to be the laptop workhorse. And they got the Airs, which are for people that don't really know what to do with a computer and they're just using it for internet and whatever. They've got the Minis, which can be used as little workstations, but you kind of need to deck them out and you have to have the right settings. And then they get expensive, and then you might as well get a MacBook Pro. And then they have the iMac, which, if you don't go the laptop route, the iMac's supposed to be your ideal desktop, but it's an all-in-one. And all-in-ones always have problems, and it's not upgradable, and it's a bitch to take apart, and all this other stuff. What I wish that Apple would do is that, okay, they got the Mac Pro, and that's meant for Hollywood, whatever. I wish that they would make an economy-like desktop. A desktop that was in the $3,000 to $5,000 range, and that could still, kick some serious ass and take some names, but I could buy it. That's what I wish.
Well, I mean, they kind of have that with the Mini. I mean, I know the Mini's not meant for everybody, but with like external enclosures for like GPUs and whatnot, you could, and the RAM is at least upgradable on this Mini. Nothing else is, but the RAM's upgradable on it. So technically,
the RAM's upgradable on the iMac too. But the problem with the iMac is that, you told me a story once where a guy bought one of these things to be his workhorse, and they gave him the wrong power supply stock out of the factory, and the thing caught on fire. It's like, I don't want that,
That was the Mac Pro, the iMac Pro. They had
it's still an iMac, and it's still an all-in-one, and if that thing catches on fire, your whole computer is gone. Yeah,
he was taking off the screen to upgrade the RAM on it, because unlike the the non-Pro version of the iMac, the other one, I'm sorry, I got confused there for a second. The iMac, the standard iMac, and only on the 27-inch, they have a little door behind the stand that you can pop open and put the RAM in. But on the smaller one, the 21.5-inch, I believe it is, you have to actually take that entire thing apart, including the motherboard, to get to the RAM slots to upgrade the RAM on that one. But on the and it's like that on the Mac Pro or the iMac Pro. You have to take off the screen, remove the motherboard, and it's got standard DIMM slots there where you can put. I've
seen the Mac Pro taken apart. It's very user friendly and accessible.
The Mac Pro is. The iMac Pro is not.
Oh, no. Well, that's the thing, is that I don't like the all-in-one where it's all crammed down into something the size of a monitor. I don't want that. What I'm saying is Apple should come out with a $3,000 to $5,000 tower that can open and that you can put extra hard drives in and change cards and update RAM and change the processor. Like, they should come out with an upgradable workhorse computer that is affordable for the normal layman like me. I would buy the shit out of that thing.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I would say make it under 2,000. Make it between 2,000 and 3,000, not 5,000. Because once you hit 5,000, you're in the Mac Pro area. And so I would think. But then again, I mean, how many actual Mac users, would want that? I mean, that's the other thing we don't take into consideration is how many out there? I mean, I know there's me and there's you, but really, I mean, the most Mac people I know are content with the way Apple's run right now. So I don't think there's any drive for them to.
You might hear some sounds real quick. I'm trying to screenshot something. Okay. Sorry about that.
There's no. I don't think there's if there is a demand, it's either so small that Apple doesn't notice it, or Apple simply doesn't care. Which some days I think they don't care, but then there's other days I think they do care because look at like the iPhone SE too. That thing's amazing for its price.
Oh yeah, no, I played with that. That thing is awesome.
Yeah. And I know I gave you crap about your mom's Mac Air when you bought it. But the Mac Air is a pretty nice little laptop if all you're doing is, word processing and watching YouTube, watching cat videos on YouTube or, live streams, that sort of stuff. But, once you move out of, just doing basic stuff with the computer, you need something a little bit more, with a little bit more power.
And that's where you get to, you either have to get a freaking iMac or you have to get a MacBook Pro. And it's like, either way, laptop, hard to take care of. Well, not hard to take care of, but hard to disassemble, all in one, hard to service, hard to work on.
That laptop, yes.
Same thing with the iMac. It's just, for somebody like me, for instance, I'm sitting at home drawing a comic book. That's what I do. I wish that they would just make a tower that's like the Mac Pro, except it's a Mac Pro, home edition. And it's in the $5,000 range. And maybe it just has one price. It costs, $3,000. And you can go in there and buy it, and then you can put whatever RAM, whatever processor, and whatever hard drives you want in it. Like, imagine what Apple's sales would look like if they just put a as-is computer available on their site, and whatchamacallit. It was just a one-off computer that you can't, you can't customize it whenever you order it or anything. It just comes as is. But you can customize it as soon as you get a hold of it. Think how many people would want to buy that just to mess with it.
Well, yeah, I know there are people out there like me who would want to buy that. Upgrade the RAM when I want to upgrade the RAM. Put any GPU, and I do mean any GPU that I want in it. They better end their stalemate with NVIDIA.
Meanwhile, as long as I can draw my comic book, I'm happy. I've got a mid 2014 MacBook Pro, and I won't lie, it's showing its age a little. It's, it lags sometimes and it's slow sometimes, and it didn't used to be this way. And I can definitely see that, but overall, the performance is still good. It doesn't glitch out on me too hard. It doesn't crash on me. Overall, the problems I've had with this computer have been minor, to say the very least. So it's like, I can't really complain. This computer's done good by me. I've had it since 2015, So, it's been going strong for me for 5 years.
Hell, it almost blew up your house at one time.
No, it didn't. It was just kind of getting a little warped because it had an expanding battery in it, and I didn't know that was a thing. And I took it into the shop, and they were like, oh yeah, this thing is about to explode in your face. I was like, oh, that sounds bad. And they put a new battery in there, and now it doesn't do that anymore. And also, with the newest OS update, they finally freaking added the thing that makes it so that if your laptop is always plugged in, it doesn't charge to full capacity. What do you call that?
Flexi charge.
Yeah, they finally, in this very last release of the current OS X, finally added that in there.
Wow, about time. It's nice to see Apple catching up with the 20th century or 21st century.
Yeah, only took them 20 years.
Yeah, they're all busy trying to get that extra millimeter off of the thickness because that really makes a difference. I don't want to bash Apple. Apple's Apple.
No, you can bash them. They're a big rich company. They deserve to be bashed.
Yeah, but they're a very successful company because they've convinced loads of people to buy their stuff, even though there's a myriad of problems with it.
I feel like that's everyone. There's nobody who sells something that there's not some kind of an issue with it.
See, this is how I break it down when I go buy a computer, laptop, whatever it is, even a tablet. I will say that Apple tablets are the best in class. Nobody can compete with them in tablets, not even Samsung. Phones, I'm happy with my Android. But anyway, what I was saying is that this is how I break down when I go to buy a computer. I look at a couple things. How long theoretically is this going to last me as is? If I built the computer today, how many years before I've got to go in and add more RAM to it, change out the CPU if I can, add more storage, change out the GPU, and so when I do that, I look at it like, especially with like a laptop, because you can't upgrade a lot of stuff in a laptop. You can upgrade the RAM, you could possibly upgrade the storage on most of them, but there's a lot out there. There's a lot of laptops, especially the higher end ones, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They're going the Apple route where they're soldering in the stuff like Apple does. And so I try to figure out in that configuration, based on my past experiences, how long is this going to last me? Now, when it comes to my desktop, I'd like to get at least 3 years out of the GPU. And for the desktop itself, I like to get between 5 to 6 years out of it before I think about actually buying all new hardware, the whole shebang, and building a brand new computer. And with Apple, you can't really do that, even with like the Mac Pro. You can add more RAM to it, and up to 1.5 terabytes. But not all the CPUs support that 1.5 terabytes. I mean, so you'd have to go to the top-end CPU, which is like a $10,000 CPU, to be able to use all 1.5 terabytes of that RAM. And when it comes to like storage expansion, yeah, there are SATA ports on the motherboard, and there's I think 8 PCI lane or 8 PCI Express ports on there, that you can add an M2 card on there to expand the storage capacity of your Mac Pro. But the 2 ports that are specifically for Apple hard drives or SSDs are tied to that T2 chip that's on the motherboard.
I hate the T2 chip so much.
And so if anything goes wrong with those drives, you lose all the data on them essentially. And I think they've actually started selling where they've changed something where you can actually upgrade those, but you have to take it into a Mac store and they send it off and they recode the SSD to the T2 chip or whatever. But that to me is anti-consumer.
I mean, that T2 chip stops me from screenshotting anything that isn't YouTube.
Your Mac has a T2 chip?
Yeah.
I didn't think it did.
It does. It stops me from screenshotting. The T2 chip is tied to hardware acceleration. It stops me from screenshotting any streaming service. It stops me from screenshotting while I'm watching something in iMovie. It stops me from screen recording these things. And for me, that's frustrating because I wanted to review stuff, on YouTube. And it's like, I need footage and screenshots and stuff for that. And it's like, my computer is set up in such a way that it's extremely frustrating. And I had to install Chrome and turn off hardware acceleration to be able to screenshot a freaking stream. It's ridiculous.
That's pretty fucked up.
And you were right. It was installing Chrome and turning off hardware acceleration, and suddenly I could screenshot.
See, that's the other thing that keeps me away from the Mac ecosystem is that control that they have over it. Because it's basically, it's kind of like that movie that Dust to Dawn, where George Clooney's all like, "Say what I do, not say what I do, not what I." Well, how does he say it? Do what I say, not what I do. And that's kind of how it is with the Apple ecosystem. Because as a developer, the one thing I've ran into with because I was working on a white label app for some of my products that I have and for IPS a couple years ago with another developer. And the one thing that stopped us like dead in our tracks was the terms and conditions of the Apple Store. They don't want apps that are like individual apps that are very similar. Like, say, if you install like, say I built this app for a white label for my app, for IPS, and I sell that to somebody and they brand it, for specifically theirs. But if Apple detects that app is very similar to another one because it's for the same web software, they will actually not allow that second app in the App Store.
Right. Okay. So you can't have two apps that are different, but they're similar, but still different.
Yeah, and they tell you to go and develop you make sure your website is mobile compatible, and then follow some standards on that, Apple, because there are things that Apple does in the background. When you go to a website on like an iPhone or an iPad, that Safari and even Chrome, that the operating system itself, the hardware itself, will do certain things that are almost unpredictable, like say JavaScript timers to update like content on a page. If you got those timers running and they run for, if they're a continuous loop one, the OS itself will actually stall those out, will stop them after an X amount of time because it's using the processor. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to deliver AJAX content to my users when you are killing off the JavaScript that makes that possible? And they don't have an answer for that. And the other thing that drives me insane is that they haven't adopted. I can't do push notifications from a website to a Apple device, even though I can do it on Android. I can do it on Chrome OS. I can do it to Windows, but I can't do it to Mac or Apple devices, because even though they tell people to go develop a progressive web app instead of an app that I guess fills up their illustrious store or whatever, they tell you to go do that, but then they don't give you the tools to actually do that. So as a developer, you're kind of sitting there going, you're cut out. I mean, especially like if you want to create a mobile app, you can essentially, if you can't get into the Apple Store, there's like 60% of your market right there gone.
Have you ever put an app in the Apple Store?
No, not because of their terms.
Wow. It's unfortunate. I mean, I would think if you're developing an app, that app would have to go onto the Apple Store, wouldn't it? Like in today's day and age.
Well, that's another problem, because as a developer, I keep up on the stuff. Believe it or not, people, there's these trends that are happening in web development, like for user engagement and stuff like that. And the problem that's causing these types of issues in especially web development and app development are people are getting like login fatigue. That's why most sites, if you go to them nowadays, you can log in with like your Facebook or your Google or your Twitter account.
No, I know exactly what that is. I've got a friend who, I can collaborate with him in art and stuff. And, 90% of my communication that I do is either iMessage, Facebook, or Discord. And it's like, this guy, he mainly uses Facebook because he just has his phone next to him, or he's got it open on his computer. So that's what he would just prefer to talk because he's not always paying attention to his phone. So, you know, if the Facebook's open, you can talk to him right there, and he's working on art or something. You message him, he'll hear it on his computer, and then he'll answer immediately. I tried to get him to just download and install Discord, put it on his computer, install it, log in. I sent him like the link to install it. I sent him everything he needed to get on Discord and just set it up real quick. He refused to do it, and his excuse for it was, I don't want one more thing to remember a password to.
Yep, and that's
one more thing I have to do.
Yep, that's login fatigue. And the other one that happens on mobile, on phones and tablets, is app fatigue. People, I mean, think about what the web actually is. I mean, the web has come a long way in the last 10 years. There's a lot of things that you can do on the web that, you know, before they got them, apps was the only way to do them. But now there's a lot of things that you can do, especially with Google driving, you know, web development, you know, the direction of web, and it's not Apple or Microsoft, it's Google nowadays. And they're driving everybody to, you know, create progressive web apps because they don't want to keep a store either. Because what's happening is, think about how many apps you have on your phone. I mean, how many would you say you have?
Hold on, I can tell you. Hold on. My phone. 35. I have 35 apps on my phone.
I got about 30 on my phone. How many of those do you actually use on like a daily basis?
Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them.
All right. How many times do you use the web browser though?
Like Safari?
Yeah.
If I'm doing regular stuff, I mean, pretty regularly, I guess. But you know, if I'm trying to search something and I want to search private, I use Bing because they just came out with a new search app that like enhances privacy or whatever. Which it's still following me, but it's one thing I can do. I have no delusions that it's actually hiding anything I do, but it's at least one step I can take. If that makes sense.
So basically what's happening with the apps, it's the same thing with the login fatigue. It's an app fatigue where people are like, they're looking at their phones and they've got 40, 50, 60, 70 apps, and now you're asking them to install another one to go to your website, basically.
Yeah, that sounds stupid.
And so Google, that's where Google comes in, and Google's like, oh, no, we don't want to, you know, concentrate on apps anymore. We want to concentrate on that one portal that you already got on your phone, which is your internet browser, because that opens up endless possibilities, and you know, for people to get their information, to get their website, get their news, get their entertainment from their actual web browser, which is what a web browser is supposed to be. So people who are like, oh, I'm going to, you know, create an app, and I would say in the next 5 years, you're going to see app stores probably disappear.
You think so?
I might be a little bit too arrogant in that time frame, but that's where things are going, because I mean, especially when Google, because right now they're still finalizing the progressive web app, and if I guarantee it, as soon as Apple's been promising an iOS with iOS 12, 13, 14, and 15 over a course of of several releases, that they will start supporting more of the web app feature, or the progressive web app features. And that's really the future of, because what a progressive web app, because since you use iOS, you probably don't know what that is. The only site that I know for a fact that is a progressive web app, and you're probably going to facepalm when I say it, and that is Pornhub.
Seriously?
The only reason I know that is because one of the people I watched on YouTube was talking about it one night.
Okay.
Because he was like in his video, he was like him and his girlfriend were talking, and it's at MXR Plays.
Oh, I know them.
Yeah, and he was, and Henry was like, "Does YouPorn have an app?" And when they went to go look at it, and they're like, "No," but they went to the website on his phone, and it asked him if he wanted to add it to his home screen, and it creates a little icon on your home screen. When you open it up, it opens it up in a stylized browser. It opens it up into the browser, but it's a stylized, and it's like an app, but it's all on the web. There's nothing on your phone other than that little icon that says, "Yo, YouPorn" or Pornhub or whatever, which one you went to.
So wait, there isn't... I thought that they did have an app, but you have to download it offline, which to me is an automatic no. I won't put anything on my phone that isn't in like a store, you know?
Yeah.
But I thought that Pornhub did have an app, but you have to get it off their website, and it's obviously not available in any app store, because who would, put that in their app store?
Well, they might have at one time, but they've updated it to a progressive web app.
What does that mean exactly there? So is it like working like an app, but it's working like an app from the web?
Yeah, when I design a website, when I go design somebody's website, I can set triggers in there that if it detects that it's on a mobile device to do certain things certain ways. And that's basically what a progressive web app is for. It's a web design philosophy in part, but there's also a lot of OS support in it, because with a progressive web app, like on an Android, I have the ability to do push notifications and whatnot to that Android device, where I am in iOS, I only have that option with an app. But it's basically the site is designed with the we use this term, it's called mobile first. And so when you design a new theme or a new website or new software, you design it with the mobile the mobile devices, like an iPhone or an Android phone of comparable size, like say the 5-inch, 6-inch phone size. And you design everything around that, and then the desktop and tablets are secondary. Like you got like a tier thing. You concentrate on the phones first, then you concentrate on the tablets second, and then finally the desktop. Because if you look at your user, like the people coming to your website, what devices they're using, I guarantee you on most websites, it's like 70% mobile devices.
Right.
And then it's like the rest is split up between desktop and tablets.
So why can't a mobile device just run a regular website?
It can. And a lot of them do. I mean, a lot of people don't even bother with apps anymore, because you can design a website nowadays easily with all the... because the web's finally caught up with all the like Foundation and Bootstrap and jQuery Mobile and all that give you, and especially like with Facebook's Vue.js and Angular and all that's specifically designed with mobile devices in mind, that you can offer a app-like experience through the web browser. And then that will, but there's also downsides to running an app, running from a website. Like, this is a biggie. Like, when you download an app, it's what, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 megabytes or more. That's because all the assets for that app are there. The only thing that they're getting from the server would be the text, basically. And maybe pictures if it's a forum, it's getting pictures and text from there. But everything else is already in the app. Like, say, Twitter. You open up the Twitter app. Like, its layout, all of its colors and buttons and stuff like that are already in the app. It doesn't have to download those things again. And so it reduces the amount of data you're actually getting from Twitter.
Oh. Whereas when trying to go through the web browser, it has to get all of Twitter off the web.
Yeah, and if because your browser is very good at caching elements off of a page, but if those elements change or update or move or something like that, then the browser has to download all that again because because there's a TTL on caching for browser data, and it's like it varies based on the site. You might run it where you might go to the same website for 6 months in a row and never download a new CSS JavaScript file or image again that's based in its in its layout. But then if they're updating or doing work and moving stuff around, you might experience where that is constantly re-downloading because the browser is like, oh, it's all new data. So I mean, typically when you go to a website, you're using about 80, you can use up to 80, maybe more megabytes just going to a landing page on a website nowadays. And on an app, you might only be using 10 megabytes.
It's so weird how websites work these days versus how they used to work back in the day.
Oh, that's Web 3.0 for you, man. Web is in a constant state of flux. I mean, the things that I knew web programming 5 years ago, some of them are still true, but there's a lot of things that don't hold up anymore. Like, a perfect example is I had this discussion with a developer friend last week about where in the page when you go to a website to load your JavaScript. Now, 20 years ago, Yahoo did a study on page loading speeds and discovered that if you put the JavaScript at the bottom of the page will load faster.
Okay.
And nowadays, with async and document ready and everything in JavaScript, you're actually hurting yourself by putting it at the bottom of the page versus at the top of the page.
Why?
Because browsers nowadays can do concurrent downloads and concurrent loading of JavaScript versus 20 years ago they could only do one line at a time. Like if they came across a JavaScript file, they were downloading that and they were waiting for it to download before they ran it. And nowadays with multi-core processors, multi-threaded web browsers, they can download all that JavaScript at once and run it all at the same time without slowing down your machine or hurting your performance any. So having it at the bottom of the page, it's got to wait to download everything before it, including the page's content, before it loads the JavaScript. And you see it sometimes. Like you go to a website and, if it uses JavaScript to like resize or place elements on the page like ads and stuff like that, you'll see like blank spots or it looks funny for like a second or two.
Right.
And then when it loads and runs, it all, it pops and the page, like you could be reading something and next thing you know, what you're reading is 20 feet down the page because it loaded the missing elements.
Well, suddenly some of the things I see websites do are making a little more sense.
Yeah, and that's because it's, the web browsers, especially like Chrome and, I don't know about Safari. I don't know what Safari's release schedule is like. Do they release it like by itself or do they only release it every time they come out with a new Mac version?
No, sometimes they'll release an update for like Safari or they release the new iTunes or pictures or whatever,
Because that's what shot Microsoft in the foot all those years ago with IE, was because it's not that IE. I mean, yeah, IE was a pile of, it was a garbage fire. It was a dumpster fire of a browser. But one of the biggest things that was wrong with IE was they never updated it in between. Release between the Surface Packs of, say, Windows XP and Vista and 7. But with Edge, they adopted a 3-month release cycle, and Edge is actually a decent browser. And the funny thing is, the new Edge that they got, the one that's based on Chromium, which is WebKit, Chrome actually took some stuff from Microsoft because Chrome's a memory whore.
I seem to know this, yes.
And the new Edge, Microsoft discovered a way to save like 35% memory over Chrome.
Hey, give me 1 second. I'm going to go make some coffee real quick. I'm going to mute it. I'll be right back.
All right.
Sorry, my throat's just getting dry.
Nobody's here anyway. But I'll entertain.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Welcome back. Still no viewers,
You're
but
taking forever to heat up.
oh, I use a carafe.
Wait.
I use a coffee pot. I don't have a single serve.
Oh, craft. Okay, I didn't hear what you said at first. No, I've got a Keurig. I just have to wait for it to warm up.
Yeah, I used to have one, but it broke, and I just never got another one.
See, it's funny. My roommate got one for like Christmas or something for his birthday. He wanted a coffee maker, and his aunt and uncle got it for him. They bought him a Keurig. At my apartment, we drank so much coffee that we killed that thing in like 3 years' time. And the day it broke, I was just like, I can't be here and not have coffee. This doesn't work. And I went to the store and I bought a new one the day it broke.
Yeah, you know what sucks. I don't mind drinking coffee at home, but I like coffee from 7-Eleven. And well, when I moved down here, There are no 7-Elevens where I moved to. It's like the
Oh.
weirdest thing because when I lived out in Virginia, there was a 7-Eleven on every street corner. I swear to God, it was like every street corner. And where I used to live, there was one right by my house. I could have walked to it. You know.
Wait, in Missouri, next to you, they don't have?
Where I live now in Missouri, there are no 7-Elevens. The closest 7-Eleven is like 10 miles away.
That is weird.
And so I have to suffer trying to drink McDonald's coffee, which should be a war crime.
Ugh.
Casey's Coffee, which is another general store out here, it's all right. But the downside to Casey's Coffee is they don't. The reason I like 7-Eleven's coffee, they don't let it set. They have times that they dump it out if it hasn't sold, and they're in the pots on the warmers, and you can usually ask how old the coffee is. Because coffee, when it sits in a carafe like that or a pot or something like that, it burns. That's why the single serves taste so much better because they're not sitting there keeping constantly warm. And so coffee that's older than a half hour I don't drink because it got like a burnt taste to it. And but that's what I liked about like 7-Eleven. The one I used to go to, I'd always go there the same time of day, like 7 o'clock in the morning. And the lady there, the clerks there got to know me, and they would purposely know that they'd look up at the clock and be like, oh, it's 6:50, and it takes 10 minutes to brew a pot of coffee. Mike's coming, let's go brew him a fresh pot. So the coffee was always fresh, and it's good coffee. And the other downside to like this COVID thing is there's no coffee.
Yeah. Well, that's why you got to make it at home.
I was out with my sister a few weeks ago, and we were near Kansas City, and I saw a 7-Eleven. I was like, "Ooh, stop there!" And she's like, "Why?" I was like, "I want some coffee." And we pulled in, and I ran in. I was like a crackhead looking for a fix. And I ran in there, and I walked over, and there was this big old sign. I almost cried, and it was like sorry, due to the pandemic, we're not allowed to sell coffee. I was like even begging the clerk. I was like, sell me some beans. I'll go home and crush them, grind them myself, and make my own pot of coffee. And she's like, we don't have any coffee beans. We haven't had any coffee in 2 months. And I'm like, no.
Jeez.
And I refuse to drink Starbucks coffee. I'm not paying no $10 for shitty coffee.
Dude, in Colorado, I got like an $8 habit of getting, what was it, a vanilla bean frappuccino with 3 shots of espresso. Oh God. Oh.
My ex, she actually introduced me to Starbucks because I wasn't really a coffee drinker back in the day. And we were out one day, and she saw a Starbucks, and she's like, "Oh, pull in there." And I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "I want a coffee." And I'm like, "Ow, damn cat." I was like, "Why?" And she's like, "I want a coffee." And I was like, "I've never seen you drink coffee." And she's like, "Well, I want one." And we went in there, and I'm looking at the prices, and I'm like, "I don't even know." I was like, "I just want a coffee." And they're like, "What kind?" I was like, "Coffee."
It's like their flavors and kinds.
Yeah. And she's over there, she's mixing the elixir of life over there at her. She's like, "Oh, I want this, I want that, and that, and that." I'm like, I don't even know what 90% of what you just said. What language are you speaking?
Well, mine's pretty simple. Vanilla bean frappuccino with 3 shots of espresso. Oh, God. Or 3x venti. You tell them that, they'll know what you mean.
That just sounds horrible.
I mean, basically, it's made with like a vanilla bean that they have, and frappuccino just means that it's iced coffee, but it's not just that. They mix it with like almond milk, and they mix this like vanilla bean extract with almond milk, and then they mix it with something else, and they grind it up with all of like the ice and everything, and they create just this frozen vanilla. Just
Oh, I can't do cold coffee. I can't do frozen cold coffee.
They top it off with whipped cream on top, and then the 3x venti. That means for them to put 3 ounces of espresso in there, which is just basically liquid
caffeine. Yeah, I was about to say. Now, when I was out on the West Coast on a trip once, several years back, the best coffee I've ever had is Seattle's Best coffee.
I doubt Seattle still has pretty good coffee right now. I doubt Seattle has good coffee right now.
They probably burnt that motherfucker to the ground.
Oh God. Okay. We need to not talk about Seattle.
I know, but it's kind of that. I'll say one last thing. That is one of the funniest things I have ever heard in my life. What's going?
Yeah.
But anyway, Seattle's Best coffee is a pretty good because they sell it on store shelves, and I buy it, and that's what I use at my home here. And it's a pretty good coffee. It's because I like dark coffee. I like medium to dark roast coffees, and they've got pretty good dark roast and a pretty good medium roast coffee.
I mean, it sounds to me like you like going places and getting coffee. I like being able to make endless coffee all day, every day.
Well, regardless to what people say about me, I'm not exactly a hermit. I do like going out. I'm not your atypical programmer that lives in a basement. Well, I guess I do live in a basement. And you know, I do try to go out when I can. I do interact with people. I do like talking with people and stuff, and that's one thing because you can always get around, to talking to people, and especially around a coffee. I just don't like coffee houses.
Well, that's fair.
I mean, there's this one up here. It's what's it called? Einstein's, I think it is. I went in there once, and
Einstein's Bagels. We've got Einstein's here.
I think that's what. Yeah, I think it's Einstein Bagels. Everybody was talking about it, and I like bagels and I like coffee. And I went in there one morning, and I had to leave before I hit the dude across from me with his own fucking MacBook.
I'm trying to think now. I got sent to Einstein's to pick up bagels for work in Colorado. I'm trying to remember where it was that I was working that they sent me out to get everybody bagels in the morning. I don't even remember now, but it's like they sent me in there with all these orders and all these different kind of things. I had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. I was asking for so much help in the store. I was showing them my list. Bagel stores are weird. I didn't know there were so many different kind of bagels, that you could cook them different ways, you can toast them different ways. There are all these different things you can put on them. There are all these little side snacks they have.
Oh yeah, people are with their. I just like cream cheese, a toasted bagel with cream cheese. I like blueberry bagels. I'm not gonna lie, I do like my blueberry bagels. But now I was sitting there, and I was watching a video on my phone. And I guess you could say it was kind of it wasn't inappropriate. It wasn't like I was watching Pornhub or anything. I was just watching a YouTube video. And I'm half deaf, so even with my headphones in, I have to have it all the way up. Well, you can hear on the headphones that I have, you can hear on the outside of it when I'm listening to. And he was like sitting there, and he's like, "You alt-right piece of shit."
Whoa!
I was like, wait, whoa. I was like, I'm just sitting here listening to Fox and Friends, and I'm like, I'm not an alt-right piece of shit. That's where I'm at in my playlist this morning. I watch CNN. I watch,
Somebody called you out because they heard Fox coming from your head.
Yeah, and I guess he thought I was, even though I am a Orange Hitler supporter. Yeah, he instantly assumed that I was some kind of white supremacist, crazy son of a bitch, and I was going to go kill all the Jews and black people in the restaurant.
Well, Should have been like, okay, well, sir, I feel offended that you just assume that I like Trump. I might like Trump, but that's besides the point. I am offended that you assumed it.
No, I was like, I repeated the line that used to drive me crazy back before I left, before I stopped being a liberal. That I was like, oh, I just like Fox because they tell the truth.
I mean,
because even though I'm a pretty down to earth guy. I mean, yeah, I talk a lot, but I'm a pretty down to earth guy. And if somebody says something derogatory like that to me, I just fuck with them. It's been a long time since I've gotten the urge. I mean, I have wanted to hit people lately, but for other reasons.
There's no shortage of a reason to hit somebody in this world. I think the real accomplishment is not hitting them.
But yeah, he was just all like, oh, you alt-right piece of trash. And I'm like, I was going to go say something to the manager. Then I was like, yeah, I looked at the manager and, they both had the hipster uniform on. And I'm like, that ain't worth it.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. I used to hang out at some coffee houses downtown on college campus that were probably pretty liberal and hipster out because, they're on college campus. And those are cool places. But now, all of those places have been bought, purchased, rebranded, and none of them are what they used to be, and none of them are as cool as they used to be, and I could never go down there. And all the little coffee shops right next to me are the same thing. They've all gentrified and turned into corporate crap, and it's nothing I want anything to do with. But
that's why I like my 7-Eleven coffee, and all the years I've been drinking it, it hasn't changed.
Well, how are there no 7-Elevens in Missouri?
There are 7-Elevens. There's just not any in this city.
How is there a city without 7-Eleven?
I don't know. I guess they just never built one here.
I mean, seems like that's your cash cow right there. You should open up a franchise.
I probably could, and then I could have the best damn coffee in the state.
Yeah. And
because there's I remember years ago there's a joke about Missouri. You're in Missouri when you drive 35 miles and you're only halfway to your friend's house. You're in Missouri when the best barbecue you ever had came out of a gas station. And you're in Missouri when you leave for work in the morning, you have the heater on, but by the time you come home, you have the AC on.
I won't pretend to understand all of those, but okay. I've never been that way in the United States.
Well, that's how Missouri is. I mean, like today, when I woke up, it was like 52 degrees outside. It was quite cold in the house because the AC had been on all night. And by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, it was almost 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, it gets pretty hot here.
And, but yeah, that's just the saying that people have. And that's what I kind of think about when, I think about the coffee at 7-Eleven or trying to find good coffee in the state, is that you might have to drive a little bit. That maybe the best coffee comes out of a gas station.
How far is the nearest 7-Eleven to you?
There are a couple of gas stations. There's this one up on that's quite close to me. If you catch him when he first makes it, it's pretty good. It's really good coffee. It's just trying to get there before everybody else, or trying to get it at a good time. It's kind of hard because he's not very consistent in making it. Casey's, like I said, Casey's has pretty good coffee. It's just right now they're not selling it because of the same reason why 7-Eleven's not selling coffee.
Because it could kill you.
Yeah. Because there'd be some retard in there fucking sneezing on it, or
2020 has just been a complete abortion of a year.
Yeah, I think when 2020 comes around, I almost said 2120.
At this rate, I feel like I'll be lucky to make it to 2021. Jeez.
Oh shit. Well, let's not talk about that.
Oh, no, yeah.
But But yeah, I mean, there are good coffee shops around here. Like, there's Scooters. It's a drive-through coffee, and they got pretty good coffee. There's Dunkin' Donuts, which has decent coffee.
Yeah.
There's Daylight Donuts, which has phenomenal donuts and coffee. I gotta watch myself with that place. I'm gonna end up with diabetes.
Yeah. Dunkin' Donuts, there used to be one right by me when I was growing up, but that hasn't been for a long time. But when I lived in Colorado, there was a Dunkin' Donuts in Boulder, so I'd go there sometimes.
Yeah, we have. They came back out here. They used to have them, and then they moved away for like 20 years, and then they started popping back up out here.
I wonder what that's about.
Just the area was probably too small, oversaturated. Because there are two donut places. If you ever come by this way, I'll have to take you to them. That's Daylight Donuts and Poppy's Donuts. Poppy's Donuts. They're only open from 4 a.m. to like 6:30 a.m. And you have to get there, because if you don't get there if you don't get there when they're right opening, you're looking at like a 30-minute wait.
They only open for like the late night trucker hours?
Early morning commute. And I guarantee you that by time 6:30 rolls around, when they're closing down, they're not throwing out a single donut because they've sold them all.
That would be weird to only be open from 4:30 a.m. to like 6:30 a.m.
Yeah, they used to have 2 locations, but some idiot burnt down the other one.
Well, I guess if you're only selling donuts for 2 hours a day, you don't really need 2 locations.
Yeah, they it was like a big news thing. The guy like drove up. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and they were closed. And they caught it all on security camera. And he went to his trunk, grabbed a gas can, siphoned gas out of his car, started pouring it over the bushes and the front door, and then used the road flare to light it.
Guess the powdered donuts weren't powdered enough the last time he was there.
No, he was mad because they were closed. So he burnt the fucker down. Oh, that's real good logic there. Since they are closed, I'm going to burn it down.
And I'll come back and get donuts the next time. Oh wait.
Yeah. Good luck getting donuts in prison there, mother.
It's like, damn, I didn't quite think that one through all the way.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, my sister used to work for him. And I'd always tell her, I was like, bring me, get me some donuts and drop them off at my house before you go home. And she's like, there's never any left. And I'm like... And they wouldn't let him put them, like get a dozen or whatever and set them in the fridge or anything like that, because they know they could sell them. And right. So she would go in at like 11:30 at night, midnight, and be frying donuts and baking donuts from midnight to 4 a.m. And then they continued. They were frying donuts until about a half hour before they closed. And she's like, it's insane. She goes, you should come up one day and just watch them. And I went up there one day because I had to pick her up one day, and I got there at like 6. And they had some donuts, not a whole lot, but they had some donuts left. And it was packed at 6 o'clock in the morning. There were probably, I'm not even joking, there were probably 100 people there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've got one of those kind of places. There's a donut place in Austin called Gordo's, and it's one of those world famous donut places that sells those big fried, like it's a coronary waiting to happen.
Yeah,
they sell those big giant fried up donuts, and it's just like whoa. But they've been on the Food Channel, Travel Channel. Gordo's is I don't know that it is world famous, but it is at least American famous. Whoa. I literally just dropped a knife and it landed right in my Cintiq. And they cut the plastic, actually. That's wow. Okay, so Cintiq plastic after 7 years starts to get a little brittle. Check.